Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
What's up, everybody? This is not the Book of Trump. This is Breaking History. I am Gordon McCormick. Today's date is April 2nd, 2025, Liberation Day, a day that will live in infamy, maybe. We'll see in hindsight. Welcome to the show. Let me get my bearings here. I'm like coming in here hot from Badlands Daily. And wait, is that an overlay or a background? Sorry, I'm trying to get everything, get all the ducks in a row. Boom, there we go. And let me, apologies, got to make sure I get all the advertisement and everything, all the sponsors addressed. How's everyone doing today? I see the chat's filling up. A lot of crazy stuff in the news happening. We're going to have a good day today. So today's going to be kind of like a Geopolitics with Ghost episode. Matt is traveling. A lot of people have been reaching out asking, is Matt okay? Because Matt's been in Thailand, and Thailand was hit with or Myanmar was hit with the earthquake last week, which impacted Thailand. Matt was in a different part of the country. He's safe. I've spoken to him. I did reach out to him, and it took him like a day to get back to me, which made me a little worried, but he did get back to me. And he said everything's good. They're safe. They're traveling back to Canada now, so he couldn't make the show. But he appreciates all the well wishes. And I told him to be safe getting back to Canada because, the sketchiest part of that trip might actually be getting into Canada itself. You never know. With that said, let's start with the first sponsor. And I just have to make sure that I have the right video uploaded. Stand by for Fort Knox. It's time to shine a light on gold. We've seen questions like, is there really gold in Fort Knox? And is the government secretly moving it? But the real question is, are we going back to the gold standard? In a world where economic stability is uncertain, gold remains a timeless asset. Fort Knox, the fortress of America's gold reserves, is under scrutiny, and this might be the moment gold proves its worth once again. Don't miss out on helping to secure your future. Gold isn't just an investment. It can help safeguard against inflation, currency devaluation, and economic turmoil. Whether it's for you or your retirement, as a family heirloom, or just to have that peace of mind, this is a perfect time to buy gold. Only time will tell if we are going back to the gold standard. Help secure your wealth now. Visit badlandsgold.com to learn how you can add gold to your portfolio. That's badlandsgold.com. And thank you to Goldco. All right, so let's get to it. How's the chat doing? I just want to check in on the chat, see how everyone's hanging out. And we're gonna kind of like we're gonna slow roll it here because I'm streaming today I started streaming at 10 a.m. Eastern, and I'm probably gonna be streaming to like 1 a.m. Eastern because I was on Badlands Daily, and then we're gonna do Breaking History. I don't know how long we'll go today. We'll kind of play it by ear, and then we are gonna do Badlands Live. I'm gonna go host that this afternoon. Ash and I switched. Normally she does Wednesdays, but I'm doing it today because I can't do it tomorrow. And we're going to run the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, has went in front of the Supreme Court yesterday. So that's already happened, but we're going to play it this afternoon. And then Ash and I are probably going to jump on and do commentary at the end of the day, maybe like 4 o'clock. And then I'm going to be on DPH tonight. So it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a good day. But we're going to kind of like run through things. This is going to, like I said, this will be like a Geopolitics with Ghosts show where we're just going to kind of talk about some of the current events. I always like the opportunity to get in front of a camera to talk about this stuff because it's way easier than typing it all out in a written form, although the written form is always very, very nice. This stuff evolves so quickly and it happens so quickly. It's hard to track. And as you write, like in the middle of writing something, it's like a new wrinkle in the story breaks, and then all of a sudden you're no longer operating from the latest and greatest, right? So I think where to start. Maybe we start with Africa. So we'll go back to the story that we did on Badlands Daily and just like rehash it. And then there's a few more stories around this that we'll kind of build out from. So the death sentence for 3 Americans over DR coup attempt overturned. How's the chat doing? All right, we got some people hanging in here. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind. Yeah, people are asking about my other job. Yeah, it's just trying to balance everything out. It's a lot, but would like to do this full time. Just trying to get there. But it's a process, and it's one step at a time, one day at a time. And this is the important stuff. Most important job is being dad, but this job is very important, I think. 3 Americans convicted for their role in a failed coup in Democratic Republic of Congo last year have had their death sentences commuted to life imprisonment, the presidency has said. They were among 37 people sentenced to death last September by a military court. The 3 were accused of leading an attack on both the presidential palace and the home of an ally of President Felix Tshisekedi. I think I got his name down. I think I actually have that down now. Tshisekedi. I think, man, I really hope that's right. Last May, the overturning of the sentences comes ahead of a visit to DR Congo by the newly appointed U.S. Senior Advisor for Africa, Masad Boulos. Boulos, father-in-law to President Donald Trump's daughter, Tiffany, is expected to arrive in Kenosha on Thursday on a trip that will also take him to Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda. The U.S. has not declared the 3 Americans to be wrongfully jailed in DR Congo, but the State Department said previously there have been talks between the countries over the matter. The 3 were convicted of criminal conspiracy, terrorism, and other charges, which they denied. The suspected leader of the plot, Christian Malanga, a U.S. national of Congolese origin, was killed during the attack, along with 5 others. In total, 51 people were tried in a military court, with hearings broadcast on national TV and radio. 14 people were acquitted and freed, with the court finding they had no connection to the attack. Death sentences have not been carried out in DR Congo for roughly 2 decades, and convicts who receive the penalty usually serve life imprisonment instead. The government lifted this moratorium in March last year, citing the need to remove traitors from the nation's dysfunctional army. Interesting. However, no death penalties have been carried out since. On Tuesday, President Tshisekedi signed orders to commute the Americans' death sentences. His spokesperson, Tina Salama, said in a televised statement. Now, wait a minute. My memory sometimes is not always there, but I think Tina Salama, if I'm not mistaken, before we move on, I want to check this out. Let me run this down. The show might turn into a little bit of a live dig. I hope people are okay with that, because there are some interesting little rabbit holes that I might want to run down that I may not have had the chance to run down, but I need to figure this out, or I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about it. Okay, so I want to go to this article. This is from Haaretz from 2022, May 19th. And the title of it is the headline is Mossad Chief Cohen kicked out of DRC on a mission that could jeopardize Israel. I was running through this during Badlands Daily, but the TLDR is that this is 2019, the Mossad director, Yossi Cohen, the guy in the middle right here, who is important to know. He's called the James Bond of Israel because you can see he's a good-looking guy. He's always dressed in a tailored suit. He's always, he has like a very refined, sophisticated way about him. And so they call him the James Bond of Israel. He's also the heir apparent of Benjamin Netanyahu. I have a nice little chart that I made that kind of explains the relationship here. Up here in the upper left, you have Moshe Schnitzer, who is the founder of the Israel Diamond Exchange in 1947, and he was the president of the Israel Diamond Exchange from 1967 to 1993. His grandson is the scion of the Israeli diamond cartel. So this guy is basically the founder of the Israeli diamond cartel. It may have existed before the ISDE was created in 1947, but he certainly is like the patriarch of it. His grandson is Dan Gertler, the Israeli billionaire who was targeted by Trump's EO 13818 in 2017, which froze his mining rights. And those mining rights have subsequently been systematically stripped away over the years by various courts. Britain, I believe in Brazil, and I believe there's another one in the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. But Dan Gertler and Yossi Cohen, in that article that I was just that we're going to go back to in a minute, caught sneaking around the Congo together in 2019, trying to orchestrate a coup. Yossi Cohen, of course, was at the time 2019 the Mossad director. When this story broke, the story was broken by a bunch of different journalists working for different outlets who were all like collaborating together. They were doing a deep dive into the Paradise Papers, I believe it was, and which was like a leak that kind of exposed a lot of corruption in various venues. One of them being the fact that this guy, Dan Gertler, right here, was secretly giving millions of dollars to other Israeli oligarchs. So he was basically exploiting the Congo, the DR Congo, using child slaves there, extracting billions of dollars from the DR Congo, and then giving millions of dollars to his friends in Israel. And I don't have the names of who the people were that he gave the money to, but he is longtime family friends with Netanyahu. So when this story broke in 2022, Yossi Cohen, who was being, or maybe it's Yossi, I don't know, Yosef Cohen, so maybe it's Yossi Cohen, he was being groomed to become Netanyahu's heir apparent. I don't know if that means he was going to become prime minister, but I mean, if you look at this guy, I mean, he looks like a polished politician. Like he looks like the kind of politician that normies are going to vote for because he's good looking, he's well spoken, he's sophisticated. Those are the kind of guys who win elections, right? Netanyahu asked him to resign. There, he was like, "Man, you are taking way too much heat right now. You need to resign. Like, walk away from this. Go bury your head in the sand somewhere. Just go live in a cave for a couple of years, and maybe we'll reinvent you in a couple of years and reintroduce you." I mean, he's looking at him. He looks like a relatively young guy. So, but anyway, to close this loop, Bibi Netanyahu spoke. He gave the eulogy at Moshe Schnitzer's funeral in, let me see what year that was. Might as well figure that out. It was in 2007. So in 2007, when this guy died, I'm not sharing my screen. Jesus. I'm so sorry. Wow. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. We're going to hit reset. All right. Let's go again. So this is why you got to have a co-host, because your co-host can yell at you that you didn't hit the final button. You shared the screen, but you didn't put the screen on stage. Brilliant. All right. So Dan Gertler is this guy in the upper right, right? Yossi Cohen is the guy in the bottom right, right? This is Netanyahu. We all know Netanyahu. So Schnitzer in the upper left, he's the founder of the Israel Diamond Exchange. Gertler is his grandson. He's the guy who is the scion. He's the current head of the Israel Diamond Cartel. Yossi Cohen is the former disgraced director of Mossad. Cohen and Gertler are caught sneaking around the Congo together in 2019, trying to orchestrate a coup. And then Yossi Cohen is the heir apparent to Netanyahu, being groomed probably for the prime minister position. And Netanyahu gave the eulogy at Moshe Schnitzer's funeral in 2007. So that kind of closes the loop, right? So all four of these guys they're all connected. They all know each other. Gertler, and then Gertler, the thing I was showing you earlier. Here's the article that from the Paradise Papers. This is an article from 2022 exposing that Gertler was giving millions of dollars of the money he was getting out of the DRC using child slaves to his friends in Israel. Maybe one of them was Netanyahu, maybe not. I don't know. I don't have those actuals. The article that we started with that we're going to go back to in a minute was this one, the BBC: death sentence for 3 Americans over DR Congo coup attempt overturned. Here are the 3 guys, the 3 Americans that they were talking about. But real quick, before we do that, let's pivot back here. This is the article that had my jimmies rustled. Mossad chief Cohen kicked out of DRC, and this is the one from 2022, the one that led to Yossi Cohen having to resign. Now, if I go back to the BBC article, the name that got the jimmies rustled was this name right here, and that would be where is it? Tina Salama. So it says, on Tuesday, President Tshisekedi signed orders to commute the Americans' death sentences. His spokesperson, Tina Salama, said in a televised statement. Now, Tina Salama, that name sounds familiar, and I might have this all wrong, but let me just go through this. This 2022 article about Yossi Cohen sneaking around. Here it is right here. As first reported by Bloomberg News, Cohen visited Congo several times in 2019 while he was still the head of Mossad. He was accompanied by billionaire Dan Gertler, who is suspected by the British authorities of paying an enormous bribe, $360 million, in exchange for mining rights in the Congo. The American and Swiss authorities suspect Gertler of similar crimes. It says later Cohen worked to get the U.S. administration to remove the sanctions it imposed on Gertler in late 2017. And that was 5 days before Trump left office. It was Yossi Cohen and it was Ron Dermer, who are two. Those are 2 people from the So Yossi Cohen is. I think I have him off screen because he's no longer Mossad director. Right here. So here's Yossi Cohen, former Mossad director. He's good friends with Pompeo. I think that's always worth noting. We're gonna toss him down here. We'll keep him like up here. He can hang out right here. He's not in the cabinet. And Ron Dermer, Minister of Strategic Affairs. And that is Ron Dermer at Mar-a-Lago, sitting next to Netanyahu, speaking to Trump. And it was Dermer and Yossi Cohen on January 15th, 2021, that got the Gertler sanctions reversed. And then it was Janet Yellen, of all people, in March, who, once the media reported on this happening, it took the media a while to figure it out because they were so focused on January 6th, that once they reported it, Janet Yellen went back and said, nope, we're going to re-put those sanctions. We're going to reimpose the sanctions on Dan Gertler. And I think, to me, that is a devolution proof, but I digress. Now, the whole point of this whole detour we just took is I think that Tina Salama is in this article, and I want to figure that out. Sources familiar with fears of a coup. Sources familiar with the details of the affair were in the 2022 article, said that Cohen appeared in the president's office on his first visit with the president in hand and was granted an unplanned meeting with Tshisekedi. At this meeting, Cohen offered his assistance on various issues such as obtaining defense technology. Several of the president's aides were present at the meeting, as was Gertler. The surprised president didn't know what to make of Cohen's visit, but at this stage, he apparently voiced no suspicions of Mossad director's intentions. The date of Cohen's second visit to Congo is known, October 10th, 2019. That day, Tshisekedi flew his presidential plane from the eastern city of Goma to the capital, Kinshasa. And it's worth noting, Goma is the city that the M23 terrorist group has taken control of. That's where they have the refining facilities where they take all of the rare earth minerals and they put them in the refinery and they refine them, and then they put them to the market. And that's where Sony and Apple and all of them buy them up. Shortly after he took off, another plane in his entourage also took off, but crashed soon after. I want to repeat that. So Tshisekedi, the same day that Yossi Cohen came to visit the Congo, he came and visited 3 times in 2019. The second time he comes and visits, all 3 times he doesn't announce his visit. So he's like, I'm just going to show up. I'm not going to announce it, which is very unusual for a for the Mossad director, for any diplomat, for any person from another government, you call the foreign ministry and you say, hey, I'm just want to let you know I'm going to be in your country. You don't have to come visit with me, but whatever. Doesn't do that any of the 3 times. Very sketchy. The second time that Cohen is there, October 10th, 2019, that same day, the president, Shisadeki, his plane takes off from Goma to go back to the capital. The second plane in his entourage takes off and crashes. Sketchy. Do I think Cohen was involved? Yes, I think Cohen was involved. But do I have proof of that? No, I don't. Let's see. And so the whole scandal is that Kabila is the former president who left office in 2018. And the reason he didn't run for re-election is because all of this stuff, the Paradise Papers, the relationship between him and Gertler was exposed, and he was so disgraced that he didn't seek re-election. But him and his dad had been in control of the DRC since the late 90s. And the guy who put his dad on the presidential throne, so to speak, installed his dad, is a guy named Paul Kagame, who was the leader of the counter-revolution in the Rwandan genocide. And Paul Kagame is now currently the president of Rwanda and is being accused of funding these terrorist groups that are trying to overthrow the DR Congo government. I mean, just let me know if these patterns are clicking with you, because they definitely are clicking with me. And so it says Kabila, who is considered close to Gertler and whom international investigators suspect of taking bribes from him, had a complicated political relationship with Shisadeki at the time. They were partners, but also rivals. Shisadeki was elected only in early 2019, and his new government relied on a coalition with Kabila's party. But Kabila continued to wield great political power, which posed a threat to Shisadeki, the first president to take office after roughly a quarter century in which Congo was ruled by either Kabila or his father, Laurent Kabila. After Cohen's second meeting with Shisadeki, and because of his connections to Kabila, the president's staff became suspicious of the Mossad chief's motives. Some of Shisadeki's aides even voiced fears that Cohen was helping Kabila acquire arms for a coup attempt. And it doesn't list Lisa here, but her name is very familiar. And for the heck of it, I kind of want to just, or not Lisa, Tina Salama. I just want to see I want to see what comes up. All right, Tina Salama. So she is the spokesperson. I know I've seen her name before. Last thing, let me just try this. See Cohen. Nope. Okay. Anyway, I thought it was worth a try. So we'll go back to the BBC article, because that was a nothing burger. But it says the three Marcel Malanga Malou, Tyler Thompson, and Zalman Paloon Benjamin were granted individual clemency by the president, according to Salama. Shisiknis Siamba, one of Malanga's lawyers, told Reuters news agency that the presidential pardon is a first step that promises major changes in the future. I just want to see if there's anything else. I don't think there's really anything else. Yeah, but I mean, this article is referring to, as I mentioned on Badlands Daily, May 21st, 2024, Christian Malanga, slain leader of failed DR Congo coup, sold cars in Utah when he lived in the U.S. There's Christian Malanga right here. Here's Christian Malanga with his son Marcel Malanga. You can tell. I mean, they're decked out in their camis and they got all their gear on. I mean, they are definitely leading a force into DRC. Here is Marcel Malanga and one of his American operating partners being captured. And then for the heck of it, here is a video of Christian Malanga hanging out with the IDF in the West Bank. And, like Christian Malanga has ties to Yossi Cohen. He has ties to Dan Gertler. He obviously has ties to the IDF. That's why he's here hanging out in Israel. And, draw your own conclusions. My conclusions are that he was probably hired by certain interested parties in Tel Aviv to try to overthrow the Congolese government. That's the DR Congolese government, that is. And, I don't think that's a really big stretch. Tina Saluma Banca. Marcel Malanga Marcel Malanga Malou might be the new Una Paluna Banca. I'm just saying. I see it. I think it has potential. I'm going to send it to Chris Paul, and I'm going to see if Chris Paul is down with that. All right. Sorry for the mix up. All right, we got some rants. So let's go ahead and hit the rants. Ashley D, $5. Thank you in advance for whatever autistic rant we will get today. Keep them coming. Accelerate. Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate that. Mien Na, $5. I hope I'm saying that right. Mien Na. With respect, you're wrong about it's Vucec being based. I hope Trump is placing them on a rug as it's getting a strange narrative boost. Melania would agree with me 100%. Please read my boost on geopolitics, please. Mia Na, if you want to just put if you want to expand on that in the chat, I'll read whatever you put. When it comes to Vucec, I don't know. When it comes to these people, I don't when I say based. I don't know if these people are I'm not vouching for their character. I don't know if they are, righteous, pious people, good people or good actors. My litmus test for basically every leader is two things. One, are they pushing for war? And they're basically linked. The two qualifiers are linked. Number one, are you pushing for war? Are you pushing us towards, are you pushing the central controlled cabal narrative that pushes us towards war? Are you advocating for war with Iran? Are you advocating for war with Russia? Are you advocating for war with China, etc.? The second one is, are you a collectivist, a national collectivist, or are you a national sovereigntist? Do you pursue sovereignty? So Vucec, from what I understand, and I've been watching him for a few weeks now, and I've looked into him a few times, and I don't know his full backstory, but I've heard a little bit about him. Is that he is even though he kind of puts rhetoric out there about wanting to get along with NATO and get along with the EU, he's resisting joining the EU and joining NATO because he doesn't want to join NATO. And to me, that speaks to somebody who doesn't want, because he understands that NATO wants war with Russia. Therefore, joining NATO is going to relinquish the sovereignty of Serbia and put Serbia on a path with war with Russia. And instead, he's pivoting towards Russia and towards Viktor Orban and basically standing up against the European Union and NATO. So to that extent, in my opinion, that makes him based. But does that make him, a fully based individual? No, it doesn't. And I could say the same for Kim Jong-un. I could say the same for Xi Jinping. I could say the same for Maduro. I could say the same for many of these guys who I view as earnest actors trying to fight against the globalist collective, the one world government people, and in pursuit of their sovereignty. And they could be doing that for any sort of motive. Their motive could be that they want to be the king of their little kingdom, right? That doesn't mean that they aren't going to be useful allies. Even if their end game is they get to be the tyrant of their own little country and they get to subjugate and treat their people very cruelly and very terribly, that doesn't mean that they aren't useful allies in the worldwide fight against the collective. So that's what I mean when I say that. Let me see if Mien says anything. Okay, so it says, yes, he is pushing for war in the hood. He is against all the neighbors' sovereignty. Ghost, I know you're interested in genuine geopolitics with Ghost. I left my email. I'll continue some enlightening links, etc. Well, Mien, reach out to me on X. Send me a message on X or send me a message on Telegram. I'll put my Telegram in the in the chat. Yeah, send me what you got. I mean, I'm open-minded to all this, but I mean, send me the evidence you have of him pushing for war. The stuff that I'm seeing is not him pushing for war. Is that he's actually talking about not going to war with Russia, and he's also, right now there's a whole like uprising against him in Serbia. So, all right, me and Not, put your X handle in the chat, and I will send you a DM. You said that you can't DM me on X, and we'll see what you come back with. But I appreciate the rant, appreciate the thoughts. We will keep all of that. We'll keep all that in mind. I mean, I'm not. Serbia isn't like a huge player in all of this anyway, so I'm not like it's not like Serbia is a make or break on it. But there's a lot of disinformation out there. I mean, right now what you have in Serbia is you have these massive protests that are unfolding, and then you have rhetoric out there that Vučić is using sound cannons against. We talked about this last week on Breaking History. Sound cannons against the protesters, and that allegation, which our guest from last week demonstrated is not true, is being used as the reason to kick this guy out of office. That is like Operation Gladio 101 formula of like how you get rid of somebody that you don't want in office and replace him with somebody who is more servile and more subversive. So send me what you got. If you have some interesting stuff, I'll take a look at it, but gotta be open-minded about all this stuff. And I get the same stuff about all the Muslims as well. Like all the people who say that we have to go murder like every single Hamas person and every single Palestinian has to die. I mean, it's a very, very just reductive kind of like one-dimensional way of looking at the world and not understanding the larger picture. All right. So with that said, let's pivot to the next story about the DRC. And I'm just waiting for this to load. Come on now, computer. All right, here we go. Share this tab instead. And I see we got another Rumble rant. We'll get to that after this story. Come on now. Yeah, tab is not wanting to share. There we go. It's kicked over here, I think. All right, so this article is M23 rebels offensive in DR Congo. No, that's not. Let's go back. Here it is. All right, so DRC government and M23 rebels will reportedly engage in first direct talks next Wednesday. This is from today, and it says, so like the background is following a lightning onslaught, the rebel forces of M23 movement, allegedly backed by Rwanda, took control of nearly the whole city of Goma, a vital hub for the trade of minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in late January 2025. It says the potential talks between the DRC government and the M23 rebels will be the first direct negotiation since the M23 group seized the capital of the North Kivu province, Goma, and the capital of South Kivu province, Bukavu, in the eastern DRC in January and February, respectively. The government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the M23 rebel group are set to hold their first direct talks in Doha, the Qatari capital, next Wednesday. A British media outlet reported, citing sources on both sides of the possible talks. The negotiations will take place unless the other side misbehaves, a Congolese official said, while an M23 source confirmed they plan to present demands to Kinshasa. Kinshasa is the capital of DRC. Both parties have agreed to keep discussions confidential, according to the report. The possible meeting follows a March 18th discussion between DRC President Felix Tshisekedi and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame. There's Kagame also held in Doha. Last Friday, Qatari mediators reportedly hosted the second round of the DRC Rwandan talks and separately met with M23 representatives. So this is a really, really good example of what I was just getting at with you, Mianya, and I hope I'm saying your name right. Is like I have long held a very, very a very reluctant kind of trepidation with my view of Qatar. It's definitely seems like an enigma. There's a lot of bad elements there. The military industrial complex, the fact that CENTCOM is there. There's a huge military industrial complex presence there. The CIA, MI6, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, all that stuff is all there. With that said, I've remained open to the idea that maybe Qatar, there's more to it than that, and there might be a good twin, evil twin element at play there. And one thing that Steve Witkoff said in his interview with Tucker last week or week and a half ago was that the Qataris are trying really hard to rebrand themselves as like the mediators of the world, and they're trying to be like the peace brokers of the world. And I think they've proven that in many fronts. They were the ones who brought the Taliban and President Trump together back during the first term and got the Doha Agreement signed, which is what the agreement that gave Afghanistan back to the Taliban, got the U.S. military out of Afghanistan and ended the opium trade, like all of the opium that was flying out of Afghanistan, which led to the opioid epidemic. I mean, I have many friends who died in the opioid epidemic and had issues from that. So I've been personally affected by it. I'm sure many of you have as well. All of that ended because of the Doha Agreement, and it was the Qataris who pieced that together. It's the Qataris who have been the mediator between Hamas and Netanyahu, even though there's been a lot of underhandedness and a lot of like backstabbing in that process. And it's been the Qataris who are trying to bring together the DRC and the M23 people who I think the M23 people, it seems like, are acting in bad faith. I don't know if they're good faith actors, but let's continue reading. Last Friday, Qatari mediators reportedly hosted the second round of the DRC Rwandan talks and separately met with M23 representatives. The first direct talks between the DRC government and the M23 rebels were supposed to take place in Angola's capital, Luanda, on March 18th. However, the M23 group refused to participate, citing successive sanctions imposed on its members. And it's referring to sanctions that were put on individual generals and officers in the M23 group related to previous activity that they had done in the past, allegations that they were involved in like killing innocent civilians, etc. Sanctions, by the way, that were imposed by the Trump administration. So important to note that, as well as the UN and the EU. Why is it acting like... Yeah, wait. I don't know why. Huh. Let me try sharing my screen again, because it's telling me that it's sharing the right screen, but I don't know, man. StreamYard's just been acting weird lately. Maybe it's just my computer. I don't know. But this is the article that we were reading from Sputnik Africa, DRC government, and M23 rebels. So with that said, let's see. There is another... Okay. Well, here is... Let's pivot to... Let me make sure... No, actually, there's one more. There is one more Africa. There's another Africa one. Okay. We're going to stay on Africa for a while. So this is from RT. Russia ready to support Africa's digital independence. Trade Representative Alexei Andreev has highlighted Moscow's flexible approach to helping other countries develop technologies that promote self-sufficiency. Russia is ready to support African countries in developing technologies that promote self-sufficiency and sovereignty. Alexei Andreev, Russia's trade representative in Morocco, has stated in an interview with the newspaper L'Opinion on Tuesday. Andreev said Russia is ready to become a strategic partner of Morocco in the implementation of the National Digital Strategy, Morocco Digital 2030. There's that 2030 date again, man. It's like everyone's talking about 2030. In an interview with the newspaper L'Opinion he also stressed that while Africa is rich in resources, data has become the most valuable asset in today's world, adding that Russia is not interested in exploiting these resources, but in equipping African nations with tools to manage and protect them. I think that's important. I believe him when he says that. I think that the evidence seems to suggest that that's the kind of partnership that Putin is establishing with these Russian countries. It's not to exploit them and steal their stuff. It's to basically empower them to protect those resources and manage them on their own and then partner with them. I think that is a much more long-lasting and sustainable alliance, and one that's going to bear a lot of fruit moving forward, especially if these countries become, first world powers, so to speak. Let's see. Russia offers not only software products, but an ecosystem of digital solutions that guarantee technological sovereignty and growth, he said. The proposed solutions include digital transformation projects, development of smart cities and systems for public administration, financial services, and business operations. He pointed to several priority domains for cooperation, including AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity, automated control systems, telecommunications, and smart transportation. Asked whether Russia is prepared to support Morocco through skills training and digital literacy programs, Andreev highlighted that the adaptability of the Russian approach. Unlike many Western companies, Russian developers prioritize localization and flexibility over rigid licensing models, he said. Russian companies offer data hosting on local servers, adapting products to the requirements of domestic brands and working closely with local companies, an essential factor for countries seeking to strengthen their technological sovereignty, the trade representative explained. The initiative is in line with a broader strategy to strengthen economic ties with Africa. In November, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov noted that trade between Russia and African countries reached a record high of $24.5 billion in 2023, despite obstacles created by the West. According to estimates from the Agro-Export Center, Russia's agricultural exports to Morocco reached nearly $280 million in 2024, marking a threefold increase compared to the previous year. Well, that is a pretty good report there, right? All right, so we're going to get to Burkina Faso in a minute, but let's stop by here on this one. Decolonization ongoing in African state. It says the revision of deals with foreign partners such as the EU and France is part of Senegal's push for sovereignty. Aminata Touré has told RT Senegal remains committed to the process of decolonization, and as part of that effort, it plans to exit the France-backed CFA Franc Monetary Union. That is interesting. Aminata Touré, High Representative of President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, I think is his name, has stated. The diplomat made the remarks in an interview with RT published on Sunday. The CFA franc will soon be ancient history, in my opinion, because it is no longer suited to the ambitions of our economies, she said. The CFA franc, introduced by France in 1945, is used in 14 French-speaking nations in sub-Saharan Africa. Critics have long deemed the currency a colonial relic, claiming that it serves as a tool for Paris to continue maintaining influence over the economies and administration of countries in the zone. ECOWAS, which stands for West African, which is a West African regional bloc, is thinking about the issue so that the currency, which would be called the ECO, would see the light of day as soon as possible, Touré said. The proposed common currency for West African countries is expected to be introduced in 2027 after being postponed 4 times due to member states' failure to meet convergence criteria set by the West African Monetary Institute. Faye, who came to power exactly a year ago, has promised radical economic reforms, sovereignty over the country's key industries, and the promotion of peace in Africa. The Senegalese president's administration has since reviewed contracts negotiated by the previous government with foreign partners. Last November, the EU announced it was ending a 2019 fisheries agreement with Senegal, citing shortcomings on Dakar's part. I think Dakar is the capital of Senegal. Dakar has taken a tough stance on the presence of French troops, which are scheduled to leave Senegal by September. This comes amid a regional trend of former colonies severing defense relations with Paris. Speaking to RT, President Faye's High Representative described the canceled EU fisheries deal as a completely unequal agreement that is no longer acceptable. Commenting on the departure of French forces, Touré said her country has just returned to normal with such a decision. Indeed, the troops should leave by September. I don't know many countries where there are foreign troops, so that was ancient history. The diplomat noted Senegal's intention to diversify its partnerships, including within the BRICS group. The BRICS are proof that poverty can be definitively eradicated in a human space. You don't need 2 or 3 centuries to do it. This is all interesting. The one thing that gives me a little bit of hesitancy here, hesitate just a little bit, is the mention of ECOWAS. ECOWAS is like that's a regime thing. Like ECOWAS is a regime, like it says West African Regional Bloc. And they're saying, and like this woman saying that ECOWAS is thinking about issuing a currency called the ECO to replace the French franc and the French franc. And yeah, I don't know if I'm down with that. Like that, ECOWAS is the thing that's trying to keep Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger like in their sphere of influence. And so I think we got to be a little skeptical of all that. All right, we're going to go to Burkina Faso, but let's hit some of the rants. Kara Maga, $10. Great show. Thanks, Ghost. Thank you, Kara. Appreciate your support. Everyone, please hit the thumbs up. We'll do an ad read here in a few minutes. And then Kara Maga, $5. What is your opinion on the leader of Palestine? Is he the one Trump said he liked? Yes, that would be President Mahmoud Abbas, and he is the one that Trump likes. So he's the one who's been seeking peace for 32 years. He's the one that has always been very consistent in saying that we want the 2-state solution. He's the one who signed the Oslo Accords in 1993, which formally recognized the nation of Israel from the Palestinian perspective. That was a big deal. Has not been reciprocated by Israel to this day. And Hamas basically is like a subversion of Abbas. So Hamas basically is subverting the government of Abbas and taking away his power, and has literally, when they came into power in 2006 in Gaza, the first thing they did before they even attacked the IDF, they attacked the Palestinian security forces and kicked them out of Gaza, and they became the de facto police force of Gaza. And we've all seen how that's gone. It's been a disaster for Gaza. So, bad news bears. Thanks for the rant. Looks like we have another rant just came in. 1 minute. We'll read that, and then we will go to Burkina Faso. Rumbling 1961, $25. Thank you so much. Great info, great story. Appreciate your rant. Appreciate your support. We also have another one from Ophelia's Flowers, $5. Worth keeping an eye on this. Yeah, and I see what you're sharing. This is the Qatar gate is what it is. We'll pivot to that after we do Burkina Faso. But before we do that, let's do our second ad read, and that would be Rise Attire. So let's do Rise Attire, and then we will. Let me make sure I know I have that in here. I don't for some reason, so stand by real quick, and I will get that played. Stand by for processing. Rise Attire.
now, you've probably seen the new collab between Rise and Badlands Media. But I'll tell you what you haven't seen yet. The end of Clown World as we know it. But have no fear. Introducing the latest addition to the Badlands INTL lineup. The sequel to the best-selling Sci War series. We've been conditioned by these clowns to accept their circus. But it's time to unwind that and strike them out the history books. The future belongs to the real, and we've got it in droves. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/rise for the full line of premium and direct-to-garment streetwear. Made to order right here in the good old US of A, the heart of the resistance. The fall of Clown World is upon us, patriots. Let's make it official.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you to Rise Attire. Yeah, they've been the past few guards. We love hanging out with them. Great people, and enjoy their gear. They got some great gear. So let's go to stand by real quick. There's a great little X post. Here, let's go to this X post. It's from African Hub that kind of like takes news stories and kind of like distills them down to like quotes. They have some pretty good stuff they put out. But and they've been posting a lot, I've noticed lately, on Ibrahim Traore, who is our guy. We think I think this guy's gonna end up being one of like the great leaders that's remembered in Africa because he's doing like the George Washington bit for Africa. But it says, the post says, Emmanuel Macron, we must strengthen our friendship with Captain Ibrahim Traore, president of Burkina Faso, and convince him to authorize the installation of our military bases in his country. And then Ibrahim Traore's response, but you are already friends with the United States, Great Britain, Brazil, Canada. Do you have military bases in these countries? I think that like pretty much perfectly sums it up. Like, yeah, that's the long and the short of it. That's the big problem. I mean, that's like the perfect mic drop response to all that. And what's his name? Macron has been desperately trying to get control of Burkina Faso back. Not just Burkina Faso, but Niger and Mali as well. And just to give everyone the lay of the land, these three countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, ECOWAS is like this whole block down here, like Mali, Nigeria, all the way up to Senegal, and all the countries along the coast here. That's what's ECOWAS. And it's like the control mechanism, kind of like the EU controls the European countries. ECOWAS controls all these countries. So these three, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, have formed their own military alliance and broken out of ECOWAS and said we're no longer part of it. And of course, the ECOWAS people are angry about that and they're trying to get them back in. The place that we were just talking about is Senegal, which is right here. So it's on the far west coast of Africa. And then just to give everyone their bearings, the DRC is right here. So you got DRC right here. Rwanda is this small country right here. Rwanda is the one that has used proxy forces to invade the DRC and seize control of the city of Goma, which is right here. And then they've also seized control of the city of Bukavu. And as I understand it, they basically kind of control this whole region around Lake Kivu, I think is what it is, Lake Kivu. And so all of like the mining, like you can see these mountainous regions, that's like where all the mining operations are. And these enormous rare earth mineral belts are all scattered along the eastern DRC, like where you see these mountains. And so in these little mines, some of these mines are huge. Some of them are very small. You have like a couple people working there, but they mine the ore from these mines, and then they take them to Goma and to Bukavu to be processed. And so by controlling the processing centers, anything that's brought into those cities is going to be like seized by these terrorist organizations. And that's how they've taken control of it. And just to give you some numbers, 75% of the cobalt is one of the most important metals used in electronic manufacturing, cell phones, iPads, laptops, all of it, cars, computer chips, all of it. 75% of the world's cobalt comes from these mountains right here. 50% of the coltan, which is another metal that's used in all those, microchips and computer chips and electronics. 50% of the coltan in the world comes from these mountains. So you're talking about resources that are extremely important to the new current energy age and the future of like energy, coming from this region. The value of all these metals that are still in the ground is like estimated around over $24 trillion right now, and growing as they like discover more of it. So there's a lot of reasons why people would want to overthrow governments and control these resources, especially if they've been stripped away from them by executive order or frozen by executive order by President Trump. So that just kind of provides some context to what we're talking about. And let me see there was another story I had about Burkina Faso that I wanted to hit before we pivoted away, and we'll go to Qatar Gate. This one. All right. This one's a really interesting one. So, African leader pardons soldiers decade after coup attempt. The officers will reportedly rejoin the Burkina Faso army to help in its fight against terrorism. I wrote about this in the Badlands News Brief today. Burkina Faso's interim president, I love that they call him the interim president, Captain Ibrahim Traore, has pardoned 21 soldiers convicted of attempting to overthrow the country's government nearly a decade ago, according to an official decree published by local media on Monday. Traore reportedly announced an amnesty last December for several people sentenced over a 2015 plot to topple the transitional government in place after the forced resignation of former President Blaise Compaoré. Compaoré had come to power in a 1987 coup during which Pan-Africanist icon Thomas Sankara was assassinated. The following persons who have been convicted or prosecuted before the courts for acts committed on September 15th and 16th, 2015 are granted amnesty. Traore declared in the order dated March 24th, naming 21 soldiers. The officers, including 2 former unit commanders of the former presidential guard, have been convicted by a military tribunal in Ouagadougou. Man, that is a real mouthful there. In 2019 for harming state security, murder, or treason. According to AFP, Compaoré's former chief of staff, Gilbert Delindier, and head of diplomacy, Jitbril Basol, 2 generals sentenced to 20 and 10 years in prison, respectively, for allegedly masterminding the failed coup, were not included in the amnesty. And I think that's an important caveat. And then it goes on to explain how the pardoned soldiers are going to rejoin the Burkina Faso military and help fight ISIS, because we know that ISIS controls 30% of Burkina Faso and are almost certainly being funded by the money that we are sending to Ukraine. Those articles, we've covered those articles many times in Badlands Daily over the past year. But, when Zelensky told President Trump and Vice President Vance that, half the money that y'all had sent me didn't even arrive in Kiev. Like we never even got it. Well, I'm pretty sure that money went to Africa. It probably went in people's bank accounts. It probably went to Syria. They went to ISIS. It went to go fund these proxy groups that are being used to overthrow governments that are a threat to the New World Order, whatever you want to call it. So let's explain what this article is conveying, because this is kind of confusing and it took a little bit of digging, and I don't claim to have all the answers. I can't promise that what I'm saying here is exactly correct, but it's what my best guess is, and I think it makes sense, and maybe it makes sense to you. we have two different players, two different names that are named here. One of them is Thomas Sankara or Thomas Sankara, and one of them is Blaise Compaoré. And so Thomas Sankara he was the first president of the nation of Burkina Faso, which was founded in 1983. He was the president of Burkina Faso from 1983 until a coup, like he was assassinated during a coup in 1987. And so Sankara has always been painted as like a communist, a Marxist, like a communist revolutionary. But you kind of have to remember that this framing is, number one, coming from the Western media. It's coming at the height of the Cold War in the 1980s, and it's coming, on the now we have the Gladio glasses that we've learned to look at this stuff through the lens that Colonel Tanner Watkins has explained, that the common strategy in Operation Gladio to overthrow governments was to accuse the ruler of being a communist, and then that would then drum up all the emotions and get people angry at this person, and whether or not they actually were, like maybe they did have socialist policies, maybe they didn't. That's a secondary thing. They would always be accused, though, of being a communist dictator who, did all the things that Stalin was always accused of, rounding up people, shooting them in the head, that kind of stuff. And so Sankara, I wasn't in Burkina Faso in the 1980s, so I can't speak to exactly what kind of president he was, but what he was known for, like one of the big things that happened, it says right here, his foreign policy was centered on anti-imperialism, and he rejected loans and capital from organizations such as the International Monetary Fund. The IMF is the vehicle that is used to enslave countries. So when a country owes the IMF money, the IMF basically comes in and starts seizing assets and like imposing its will on a country so that it can regain, like it can recoup its investment as it sees it. So it's indentured servitude. It's debt slavery to an international monetary fund. Literally, it's what it's called. So he refused to take their money. And then as a result of him refusing to take their money, he was then murdered, overthrown, and this guy was installed as president, and that would be Blaise Compaoré, 1987. So he comes into power. He led the coup against Thomas Sankara. He becomes the leader of Burkina Faso. And then he goes on to serve for 27 years. He was the president of Burkina Faso. And, when you look at the modern state of Burkina Faso, as I understand it, you got people who don't have electricity, people who don't have indoor plumbing. Ibrahim Traore has explained it many times that, we are, I think it's the fourth largest producer of gold in Africa, like exporter of gold in Africa. And yet we are one of the poorest countries in Africa. Why is that? Well, that kind of speaks to what kind of maybe leader Compaoré was. Did he actually improve the life of the people over his 27-year term? I don't think he did. Probably not. So in 2014, October 2014, there is an uprising called the 2014 Burkinabe Uprising. And from what I can gather, this is where it becomes really confusing and where the Operation Gladio stuff is really important to have this understanding. Just because a bad guy is being overthrown does not mean the people overthrowing him are not also bad guys. Are not also, like, just because a CIA-backed leader is being overthrown does not mean that the group overthrowing him is not also a CIA-backed group. I think it's important to understand that. That happens all the time, and it's a great way to especially in a country where there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of resentment. It gives catharsis to the people to think that, okay, well, this new government, at least it's not the old government, and maybe it's going to be the opposite of what the old government was. That's always the hope. So what ends up happening is that you have this government overthrown in 2014. And if you look back at this map, let's go back and look at the map. Remember, in 2011, we had, so here's Burkina Faso. In 2011, we have Libya up here. NATO launches its first military operation in Libya, and that was the military operation against Gaddafi to overthrow his government. They then looted and plundered his armory. They then take the armory and they send it all to Syria. They send it all up here to Turkey. It's then walked across the border from Turkey into Syria, given to a bunch of rebels, and those rebels are, and then that equipment, and we're talking like tanks, we're talking all kinds of like heavy equipment, and these rebels are then instructed to overthrow the Syrian government, which was Assad. Those rebels are what we now call ISIS. That's how ISIS was created. It was created by NATO. It was created by the CIA. It was created by the European Union. They all knew exactly what they were doing. It wouldn't be a stretch, I think, to think that 3 years after that, in 2014, you then have a similar coup launched against this guy, Blaise Compaoré, in Burkina Faso. I don't think it's a stretch to think that coup was in line with the coup being launched in Libya, where basically it's like, hey, we're just going to clean shop. We're going to get rid of all of these old dictators. The people are unhappy with them. We're going to install a democracy. Like we all know what democracy means whenever they say it. And then, of course, that'll help us better control the people rather than like a brutal dictatorship. So 1 year after this happens, or maybe like 6 months after this happens, in 2015, sometime in 2015, another coup is another military operation by the Burkina Faso military is launched against the transitional government that was installed after this other guy was overthrown. Okay. That coup fails. And the people who were involved, the military guys who were involved, are rounded up, arrested, thrown in jail. And then 4 years later, in 2019, they're all sentenced to basically like life in prison, 20 years in prison, 10 years in prison for the two leaders. And the rest of the guys are given a bunch of different sentences. So the guys who just got pardoned are the 21 soldiers who participated in that coup, like the officers who participated in the coup, who were thrown in prison. They're the guys who got pardoned. They were trying to, in my opinion, overthrow the transitional government, which is probably like a NATO-backed Gladio government. They're trying to overthrow it, retake control of the government of the country on behalf of the people. They're stopped, thrown in jail, and now they're being pardoned by Ibrahim Traoré. And Traoré, by the way, is not just pardoning everybody. He says that the two generals who planned the whole thing, they don't get pardoned. They're going to stay in prison. It's the officers who were operating underneath them, who were following orders, probably acting in earnest, probably thinking that they were doing a service for their country. They're the ones who get pardoned. They get restored to the military. And now he's like, I need y'all to go fight ISIS because ISIS is pretty bad news bears in that part of Africa. You may remember that video that got released last year of those 40 Wagner guys. These are 40 Wagner mercenaries who were like ambushed by ISIS and murdered. That was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was right around this region right here. I think it was either in Mali or in Niger. So like this whole region right here, where these three countries come together, that's like where ISIS operates. And let me see if I can actually pull a map up. Hold on. ISIS map. Western Africa. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so this is what's the authority here? The IIS. What is the IIS? Because that matters. You want to make sure your sources are good. Well, we'll figure out what the IIS says because we want to make sure that our sources are good. But this is a pretty good map. It at least shows the elements that you're dealing with here. So like these are all different. These different colors represent different factions, right? Because ISIS is like a collection of different factions, including Al Qaeda. It's a coalition of different factions that are all fighting for the same thing. But then you could imagine that within the coalition, there's there's tension and there's jockeying for position. And the purple is the Islamic State, which is like the official like ISIS flagship, right? And so if you watched the Tonga Tonga ambush that we did in on the Book of Trump a few weeks ago last week with Alpha and CanCon, the Islamic State, the purple one, that's the group that attacked those Green Berets. And then there's that's the Islamic State of Sahel, and then there's the Islamic State of West Africa. So I think it was if I remember correctly, it was the Islamic State of Sahel that attacked those. So you can see like the breakdown of where this is. I mean, Burkina Faso is like completely overrun with ISIS. And that's the yellow is the JN IM, and I believe, let me look up what that is. I believe that is it's a word that I can't pronounce, but the Jamaat Nasir al-Islam wal Muslimin. Yep. So that is what it is. So anyway, let's go back to that map because that was a pretty good little map we had there from the IIS. I'm gonna grab this thing and put it in the mind map. Let me copy that and copy it over there real quick. But yeah, so you can see that this is a real problem these people are dealing with. And so why does this all matter? I mean, well, this all matters because if you want Africa to become independent, if you want it to become sovereign, if you want it to become prosperous, which I think is absolutely critical to, number one, establishing the multipolar world order. Number two, defunding the globalist cabal because they exploit Africa. They extract the wealth of Africa in order to enrich themselves and power their war machine. And number three, the migrant crisis. I mean, you think about like all these videos and images you see of like Europe being overrun by African and Middle Eastern migrants. America is dealing with those issues as well. Those people are just responding to incentives. So when these Westerners show up in their village on a bus and they're like, hey, come get on the bus. We'll take you to the airport. We'll fly you out of here and you can go live a better life somewhere. I mean, a lot of these people are probably like, okay, like, yeah, like here's a bunch of cash, by the way, here's a gift card with, $1,000 on it. Like, good luck. And then they just drop them off in the middle of like Chicago or New York or whatever and just, wave goodbye. Or they take them to a small town America, and they say goodbye. Well, those people are no longer going to have the incentive to do that if they can have like a stable life where they come from. So I think it's important to resolve this stuff. So you can see why Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are like important places to clean this up, because that is where you have a very high concentration of these terrorist groups. And then you come down to the DRC. The red here is the ADF. This is the stuff that we're talking about with, I think, as I understand it, I'm pretty sure that's M23. And this is probably, I would imagine this map is probably from a while back. This is from December 2023. So this is before you had this big M23 incursion into Goma. So anyway, how's the chat doing? We got... All right. Am I on the Israel website again? Is it going slow? Is this thing slowing down? I am on the Israel website. Guilty as charged. But you know what? We don't need to be on the Israel website. I'll X those out, and maybe that'll speed us up a little bit. Because of the Rumble rant that gave us the RT article, we can just use the RT article. We'll talk about the RT article. We'll talk about Qatar Gate a little bit. And that would be this one. Okay, so this article is, will this scandal be the end of unsinkable Netanyahu? Revelations of high-ranking Israeli officials' shady connections to Qatar open a new front in the PM and his allies' fight to retain power. A major scandal known as Qatar Gate has erupted in Israel involving alleged Qatari interference in Israeli politics. At the center of the investigation is Elazar Feldstein, former chief aide to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was arrested in November 2024 on charges of leaking classified documents to foreign media and orchestrating leaks from high-level government offices, allegedly with Netanyahu's own approval, under the pretext of combating disinformation. The investigation revealed Feldstein's connections with Qatari authorities while serving as an employee of the press office in Netanyahu's administration. Feldstein had for several years combined his government work with private practice, offering political consulting and branding services. One of his clients was Qatar. Specifically, on behalf of Doha, Feldstein and his team of Israeli consultants developed a reputation for protection strategy during preparations for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Later, they helped Qatari brands regain their positions in Gulf markets that had been lost during the 2017-2021 diplomatic crisis. What's interesting about this, the FIFA World Cup thing, is that Pam Bondi was connected to that, and there's a number of other people from the Trump administration connected to that too. And I wonder if that is all going to come out and be like part of this whole scandal. We'll see. When the most recent war with Hamas began in October 2023, Feldstein used his official position to actively promote the idea of Qatar's exceptional role in resolving the Gaza crisis. He was so successful in communicating this position to the media that at one point, Israeli press began emphasizing Qatar's key role in negotiations compared to Egypt and Jordan. In turn, Qatar actively used its Al Jazeera media network to promote positive coverage, strengthening its image in this context. However, after Feldstein's arrest by Israeli security forces in the autumn of 2024, the contract with Qatar was abruptly terminated. Initial publications about the Qatar dossier in Israeli media raised more questions than outrage. Feldstein, along with other figures in the case, such as Jonathan Urich and Shrilik Einhorn, had been actively involved in international activities, advising not only Qatar, but also other Israeli partners in the Middle East and beyond. Had they not used confidential materials from their prime minister's office, their work might have been considered part of Israel's back-channel diplomacy. Yet, in the context of the conflict with Hamas, the situation took on a different meaning. It became clear that Qatar's status as a neutral force in negotiations with Hamas was not accidental, and this country's role in the process had been significantly exaggerated. For example, Doha's decision not to pressure Hamas's political office was presented as diplomatic flexibility, which also raised questions. Even more suspicious was the downplaying of the scandal involving Hamas military training camps in Syria's Afrin, to whose construction Qatari contractors were allegedly linked. The series of coincidences strengthened suspicions that those involved in the Qatar dossier had actively helped Qatar cover up international scandals using documents from the Prime Minister's office. All three suspects theoretically had access to such materials, although Feldstein's lawyers called these accusations baseless speculation. Those involved in the case have so far been unable to explain how Qatar managed to navigate crises with minimal damage to its image. Adding to the intrigue, Urich and Einhorn are also suspects in a case involving the intimidation of official Shlomo Filiber, who allegedly retracted his testimony about Netanyahu's corrupt connections after prolonged psychological pressure from Likud representatives. The case, initially classified as a special investigation under a secrecy order imposed by intelligence services, has been becoming increasingly public. In recent weeks, the escalation has drawn public attention as new developments pointed to major new suspects. This scandal has affected not only Israel's political class, but also the business community, significantly expanding the circle of suspects. What began as an investigation into abuse of authority soon accumulated new details and acquired the colorful name Qatargate. This name hints at potential consequences for the country's top leadership, including the possible resignation of senior Israeli officials. However, those implicated in the scandal aren't giving up without a fight. According to investigators, Feldstein was involved in transferring confidential documents to foreign media, bypassing military censorship, as well as organizing leaks from high-level government offices. Allegedly, he acted with the permission of Netanyahu himself, who, according to the prosecution, sought to combat fake news about Israel's foreign and domestic policies this way. Over time, the investigation expanded in scope. The number of suspects grew to 5, most of whom have had close ties to the prime minister's office. It also emerged that Feldstein not only leaked confidential information, but also advised Qatari authorities, helping the monarchy use this information for diplomatic purposes, including positioning itself as a key mediator in matters concerning the release of Israeli hostages. So, yeah, I mean, that was a lot. It's a lot. If you're not following all that, I don't blame you. And this article goes on and on and on. We're not going to read the whole thing, but so what's been happening in Israel is you have this investigation into these links between Netanyahu's government and Qatar, and the investigation has been run by the Shin Bet, which is like their FBI. The Shin Bet leader Ronan Bar had allegedly been leaking some of his findings from his investigation. He had been leaking the media, and what was being reported, I don't know, a month ago, was that Netanyahu and the Qataris were basically in bed together, and that the Qataris were had funded October 7th, that the Qataris had sent money to Hamas to fund October 7th. In response to that news leak, so Ronan Bar, who's the leader of the Shin Bet, leaks that basically to let the media know, to let the public know, hey, Netanyahu might have been involved in October 7th. In response to that, the Qataris came out and they said, wait a minute. Yes, we did send money to Gaza, not to Hamas, but to Gaza. But all that money was given to Netanyahu. It was Netanyahu who gave that money to Hamas. So if you're going to point the finger at anyone, point the finger at Netanyahu. Now, Ronan Bar may have actually already known this, but I think maybe, and I'm speculating here, but I think his strategy in leaking this report to the media was to provoke the Qataris into saying that out loud, which is what they did. They came out and they said, Netanyahu is the one who gave the money to Hamas, not us. We gave the money to Netanyahu with the understanding that it would ultimately land in Gaza to help the Gazan people. Whatever happened to it after that is up to Netanyahu. So Netanyahu then gives the money to Hamas. Netanyahu and Ronan Bar then start having a public spat. Netanyahu accuses Ronan Bar, the leader of Shin Bet, of knowing about October 7th before October 7th happened and saying, hey, you knew October 7th was going to happen. You knew about the security flaws and you didn't come and tell me. You didn't tell me that we had these gaps in our system that were going to be exploited. You knew that there was an attack being planned. Why didn't you say anything? And also, by the way, the day of the attack, you didn't come wake me up when I was in bed. You didn't wake me up and let me know we were under attack. So those were the reasons that Netanyahu has now given to fire Ronan Bar. That happened a week and a half ago. He said, I'm going to fire Ronan Bar. He brings the process is in order to fire the leader of the Shin Bet, you have to bring the case to your security cabinet, to your cabinet. Your cabinet then has to vote on it to support the firing. The cabinet votes on it and they vote to support the firing. While that, all this is public, all this is happening in the public, it was highly anticipated. So while that's happening, the attorney general, let's go back to my mind map. We can explain who these people are. So Okay, so here's the security cabinet, right? Itamar Ben-Gvir has resigned. He's back now, so I need to say he has returned. He returned last week, so he has returned March 2025. So he's not back in the government, and the reason he's back in the government is because Netanyahu started the war. He resigned in January when Netanyahu signed the ceasefire with Steve Witkoff. Itamar Ben-Gvir was like, no way, not okay with that. But he's back, so we'll get rid of your strikeout here. You were out, but you are back. All right. And then we'll get rid of the X. We'll keep the red around the box to highlight the fact that he resigned. Okay. So Gali Baharav Miara, I think I'm saying her name right, Attorney General of Israel. She then brings to the Supreme Court of Israel, she says this is outrageous. Like, Netanyahu cannot fire Ronan Bar because he is currently under investigation for potential ties like to corruption, maybe even implicating him in October 7th. For these reasons, Ronan Bar should be allowed to stay in his position and finish his investigation against Netanyahu. Ronan Bar is already arrested last fall 2 of Netanyahu's aides, Feldstein and the other one. Therefore, we should let him finish the investigation because otherwise Netanyahu is going to bring in a yes man who's going to close the case. The Supreme Court hears her complaint, agrees with her, and says we're going to freeze the firing. So I don't really know what that means. I don't know Ronan Bar definitely is not working right now, I don't think, as the head of the Shin Bet, but he's also technically not fired yet. It's very, very strange. You also have like the opposition party, like the 53, 52 Knesset members who oppose Netanyahu, who aren't part of his coalition. They've all filed grievances. They've all filed complaints with the Supreme Court citing similar things. So Supreme Court has heard from several people about this. Netanyahu then, like 3 days ago, proposes hiring this other guy. Let me see if I can't find this one. He's like, I'm going to hire this Navy, this guy from the Israeli Navy. And not only does he upset the opposition, but he also upsets like people in his own party who are looking at him like, you can't hire this guy. Like, this guy's a yes man. Like, the optics here are so bad by hiring this guy that it actually leads to Netanyahu withdrawing his nomination of this guy because the backlash against him, not only from the opposition party, but from his own party, is so strong. So then he comes back. Oh, wait. So he withdrew the nomination. He then, or at least according to the narrative, according to the news, he withdrew his nomination. And then he then comes back and says, you know what? I don't really care. I am going to hire this guy. Like, middle fingers up to everybody, and just says, I don't really care. I'm the prime minister. I do what I want. And Vice Admiral Eli Sharvet, that's his name. His picture is not here. This is Ronan Bar on the right. This is the Attorney General on the left. And so here's the news story. This is the newest story. It says some 48 hours. Let me go. I'm sorry. Share this tab instead. So it says some 48 hours. The headline is PM announces Shin Bet deputy as interim chief, even as Bar's firing remains frozen. And so it says Netanyahu's office says he is continuing to interview candidates for the role, insists dismissed incumbent will be out of office by April 10th. Some 48 hours after announcing his decision to appoint Vice Admiral Eli Sharvet as the next head of the Shin Bet, and then backtracking. So like I just said, he then backtracked. He pulled the nomination. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Wednesday the deputy head of the security agency will serve as its acting head instead of the incumbent. So I'm sorry, I misread that first paragraph. I had to read it like 3 times. So he pulls the nomination of Eli Charvet. This is the vice admiral from the Navy, like retired, I think. Pulls his nomination because the backlash was just too strong. It was like, this is a yes man. You can't appoint. It would be like Trump appointing, Dan Scavino as the head of the FBI while the FBI was investigating Trump, right? I mean, the optics of it would just look so bad. Or appointing, Michael Flynn as the head of the FBI while the FBI was in the middle of investigating Trump. The optics of it would just look really bad, regardless of how innocent or guilty you are. And those were the arguments being presented by everybody, even the people who like Netanyahu. Shin, identified only by his first initial, will serve as acting. So now what Netanyahu is doing is he's saying one of the deputy heads is now going to be the acting head instead of Ronan Bar until they can find somebody to fill the position. So it says Shin, identified only by his first initial, will serve as acting head of the agency until a permanent chief is appointed, the prime minister's office said in a statement. The PMO insisted that Barr, who was formally fired by the cabinet earlier this month, would vacate the position by April 10th. However, he remains in his post after a temporary injunction was imposed on his dismissal by the High Court of Justice, which is hearing petitions against the firing. The PMO said that's the Prime Minister's office said that it will not be possible to submit a name for Barr's replacement to the Senior Appointments Advisory Committee in time. The Premier's office also said that Netanyahu is continuing to interview candidates for the role, including contenders he had previously spoken to. Through the court froze Barr's firing. It allowed Netanyahu to interview candidates to replace him. So the court said, we're freezing the firing, but you're still allowed to go interview people. This is all very confusing and convoluted, and I hope this has made sense the way I've laid it out. But the point of all of this is that I think what's going to end up happening is that we're going to get some sort of earth-shattering revelation that Netanyahu was 100% involved in the October 7th attack, right? Ronan Barr was headed down that path. He was very strongly alluding to it. And then you had the former head of the Shin Bet who left office in 2021. He went out and did a public interview a few weeks ago where he said, I have information about Netanyahu giving money to Hamas back in 2019, referring to the Qatari money. And I will go public with that if Netanyahu fires Ronan Barr and follows through with these threats. This is outrageous. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And then in response to him doing that, Netanyahu filed a police report with the Israeli police saying that this was a mafia-style shakedown. He was being blackmailed by the former head of the Shin Bet because the former head of the Shin Bet was threatening to tell the truth about what he witnessed while he was the head of the Shin Bet. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's like laugh out loud funny how cartoonish this has all become. And then here's the Eli Charvet guy. This is the guy that they said was way too much of a yes man and a Netanyahu simp to be the head of the Shin Bet at this moment in time. Man, I feel like I've overloaded everybody with probably way too much information. How's the chat doing? Are y'all still hanging out? Yeah, chat's still here. Chat's still here. Sammy the Squirrel, $10. Always love your show, Gordon. Glad to hear Matt is safe. Sammy, man, it's great to hear from you. It's been a while since I've heard from you. Glad to hear you are with us today. Cheers to you. Cheers to everyone out there in Badlandia. Looks like we got a few other rants. Looks like I see Crane Up. 59. We got sorry, I lost your rant here. Crane Up 59. I'll boost later, Gordon. You are Badlands' biggest diamond in the rough. Though you're polishing up quite nicely, brother man. I appreciate you, Crane. Hope to see you at the next GART. I don't know if you'll be there or not, but oh wait, somebody in the chat. I just saw this. Spotzel. The visualization of immigration. Let's see. Oh yeah, I've seen this video. This is a good video. Maybe we'll wrap up with this. Here, let me save that. I'm going to save that Spotel, and I'll plug that in as the video we'll wrap up with. How about that? And we've hit all the rants, we've hit all the things. I have to actually take over of Badlands Live here in like 20 minutes, so I am going to go ahead and sign off because I need to get some lunch and take a bathroom break, and go to get ready for Badlands Live, because I've got about a 3-hour show with that, and we've been going since 10 a.m. nonstop. But let's see if we can get this video uploaded. All right, video clip. And I'll check one more time. Yeah, Armageddon, what you need to eat? It's like, yeah, I do need to eat. Need to get something. Sandwich or something. Sweet. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to be on Badlands Live here. We're going to watch the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, went in front of the Supreme Court yesterday. So we're going to play that clip, that video. Ash is going to be joining me at maybe 4 o'clock to do some commentary. And then I'll be on Devolution Power Hour tonight. I'll be back on Friday at 3 Eastern to do Geopolitics with Ghost, which is a similar format to what we just did. It'll be a little more polished. I mean, this was I kind of was just taking the stories that we didn't get to in Badlands Daily today. And then Monday, the Book of Trump, we're going to do Burning Bright's going to join me. We're going to do Righteous Russia. So we're going to do the story of Putin's rise to power, and then his role in this whole chess match that we see playing out right now, which I think is very timely, because I think Trump is going to Arabia here at the beginning of May. That's the word on the street. So looks like this video has played. So I'm gonna play the video and I'm gonna sign off. So everyone have a great day. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed the show, and share the show. That's a great way to get us out there. Otherwise, I will see you next time. This is Breaking History. Goes to base Patrick Henry, Gordon McCormick, and y'all have a good day.
Some people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the one.
Let me set it as the outro. That way the video will automatically the stream will automatically end when it's done.
Some people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. And how many people make less than $2 a day in the world? We'll start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. China adds another 480 million people, making less than $2 a day. And unfortunately, the rest of Asia has a heartbreaking 810 million people who the World Bank says make less than $2 a day. And finally, there's 105 million of Latin America's population that are desperately poor. All told, the World Bank says there are 3 billion people in the world. 3 billion people who are desperately poor, making less than $2 a day. That's 3,000 gumballs. And every year, we take 1 million and suggest that we've somehow made a humanitarian difference. Of course, we don't pull our immigrants from these desperately poor populations, do we? These people are too poor, too sick, too disconnected to make it here as immigrants. We tend to pull our immigrants out of the better off poor of the world. And Mexico tends to define the type of immigrant that we bring here because the plurality of people come from Mexico. And Mexico is poor. How many people in the world live in countries that have average incomes lower than that of Mexico? And the World Bank tells us that that number is these 3 billion plus another 2.6 billion people. 5.6 billion people in the world who live in countries with average incomes below that of Mexico. That's 5,600 gumballs. And so what is it that the elites are telling us? They're telling us that when we take this 1 million immigrants, that we somehow or another are tackling world poverty. And we have to do it regardless of the effect on our unemployed, the working poor, the most vulnerable members of our society, regardless of the effect on our natural resources. Even if we went by the most radical proposals in Washington, which are to actually double our immigration to 2 million a year, which would totally overwhelm our physical, natural, and social infrastructures, we couldn't make a noticeable difference. And we may be really hurting the impoverished people of the world because the million that we do take are among the most energetic, often the better educated, certainly the most dissatisfied people that if they did not immigrate would be the agents for change to improve the lot of all the people in these countries. The true heroes in the global humanitarian field are the people in these countries who have the wherewithal to immigrate to another country but instead stay in their countries to apply their skills to help their fellow countrymen. Unfortunately, our immigration system tends to entice these very type of people to abandon their countrymen. The impossibility of making even a dent is actually worse than it looks here. Because last year, when we took 1 million immigrants, these countries added, births over deaths, 80 million more people into the impoverished population. And this year, Congress is bringing in 1 million legal immigrants. And this year, according to the United Nations, these countries are expected to add another 80 million people. And next year, you can be quite sure that Congress, unless stopped by the American voters, will bring in another 1 million immigrants. And these countries, unfortunately, will be adding another 80 million people into these impoverished nations. We could take 5 million a year, but we'd never get ahead of what's happening in these countries. Not in this century. Don't you see? Immigration can never be an effective or significant way to deal with the suffering people of the world. They have to be helped where they live. 99.9% of them will never be able to immigrate to a rich country. There's no hope for that. They have to bloom where they're planted. The only place that 99.9% of these people can be helped is where they live. Let's help them there.